Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Decoding Race series. So happy to have you here. My name is Rachel Spivey, and I'm the project manager for Race at Google. Race at Google is a new comprehensive effort across Google to organize around racial justice issues. But more importantly, this started back in 2013 after the verdict of Trayvon Martin came out. And a group of BGNers organized and did a hoodie march around campus. And that's when we really started grappling with race issues. So I just want to take a moment to honor one of our panelists, Sybrina, for her sacrifice to get us to this point where we could have a packed out room and have race dialogues that everyone wants to participate in. And now I'm going to pass it along to Felicia, who's going to tell you, she leads our Decoding Race series, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about what you can expect from this talk.
Hey, everyone.
Hey.
First, thank you so much for Rachel's leadership and getting us to this point. I started in January as the head of Black community engagement, and I'm so very proud of our company here at Google being willing to have open and constructive conversations on race. I think it's a huge step forward, and it's no secret that in our country, racial tensions are high. And so we want to have or do our part here at Google to have those conversations again constructively with external leaders. And so just thank you for being here. This is the third of a series of conversations happening. So we're so glad that we could do this in San Francisco, and be sure to join us also in Mountain View December 12th for Can Computers Be Racist? But today is about deconstructing race. And so again, we want to make sure that we're in a room where we can be open, honest, constructive with each other. So we definitely look forward to a conversation, but also an exchange at the end of this program. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I want to bring to the stage Michael Skolnick. Michael, we contracted to help us lead the Decoding Race series. He's done tremendous work already, but even before his partnership with Google on this, he political advocacy for Russell Simmons, who we both worked for years. He's a national leader and activist in his own right, and we're so proud to have him here as a strong supporter and partner. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, Felicia, a long time friend. Want to move over here? First, I want to thank the panelists. These are all personal dear friends of mine that have flown from around the country to be here. And our leaders, our heroes and sheroes. I sit on the board of the Trayvon Martin Foundation, so Sybrina and I work very closely together. So thank you all for taking time out of your schedule, especially during this time, to come here. I would say something very briefly, because I know we want to hear from these amazing people today. The day after the election, this event was planned way prior to thinking what the outcome of the election was going to be. So there was no quick maneuvering to get this thing to happen today. This has been planned for a few months now. But the day after the election, I got a lot of phone calls from friends, or text messages and emails from friends and family, like, what do we do? From all folks who voted for Trump, folks who voted for Hillary, what do we do? And what I recommended to people to do was to get together and have dinners in their homes and just bring together your family and your friends and your colleagues. I invited 20 over to my home on Wednesday night. 85 showed up. The next night I invited 30, 90 showed up. So it's no surprise, Felicia, that this room is packed, because I think people want to get together in community and have conversation. But this is one of many. So I would end by saying I am here to be of service to you as Googlers. We do have one coming up at Mountain View on the 12th. We have, I believe, 7 more after that around the country and around the world. These amazing people were folks who I called on first, but we have other folks who we want to call on after this. So if there are people who you want to come speak at your campuses across the country and across the world, please let folks at Google know that you want them to come. And we're taking, recommendations. We want to bring the best and the brightest minds we have in this country and around the world on this issue. So please offer suggestions after you hear this conversation today, so this series really means something to you. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to my dear friend, Michaela Angela Davis, who will lead the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, thank you for setting the stage that this is a conversation. And I don't do panels, I don't do keynotes. it's too real. Like, it's too real right now to not want to make the effort to like really have real talk. Where's my sister Felicia? Okay. Don't get it twisted. Just because she looks that fierce. Girlfriend has been in the trenches, and I love you. And there is no mistake that it was sisters that put this together, because that's what we do. So I appreciate you. And on that note, I think it's, first, how y'all doing? No, I mean, real talk. How are you doing? There is, it's very difficult to talk about something as, complicated and triggering as race without, particularly today, without checking in with our humanity. And for a lot of people, they are rocked and traumatized and terrorized, and it is real. I was talking to Felicia. I have a 92-year-old grandmother who was a refugee from Jim Crow South. She was in World War II. She saw the assassination of Martin Luther King. And she told me my mother is the worst thing that happened in her lifetime. That's her. For some people, this is the American dream. We are having such a range of feelings, like real ass feelings, that I just don't want to. I don't want to start this conversation pretending that now we're gonna solve race today at Google, right? But that we are that we ground this in our humanity and in the ways that we can, because I am struggling. I am radically revisiting a lot of my relationships, a lot of my projects, a lot of my platforms. I am side-eyeing so many people right now. When the numbers came out, I'm gonna just be honest. I want to be honest so we can grow, because we can't shapeshift around issues if our intention is to understand each other. Because sometimes it is more important for us to feel understood than to be loved. Like you don't have to like me and love me today, but hopefully we walk away with a little bit more understanding. So that I just want to set that as my intention today in this conversation, is to have some honesty and get to some understanding. And understanding always leads to solution, I think. Right? You look so familiar. Yes. Hi, anyway. So maybe I'm just feeling your energy. So instead of doing like formal bios, I'd love for and we'll start with you, Jose. First, how are you feeling? And how do you identify yourself? Like who are you as you get to define yourself?
I am a product of the Bay Area. So this is where I'm from. This is where I grew up. I grew up in Mountain View before Google got there. I went to school at San Francisco State and lived in Valencia in 17th when a studio was $800. Yes. So that's the first thing I would say. But identity-wise, and I think identity is like the thread that ties us all together. So I'm the Asian-looking person with a Hispanic name who's gay, who's undocumented, who majored in African American studies at San Francisco State. So that's my identity. And then 2 years ago, I made a documentary for MTV called White People. And I did that because I was really struck after coming out as undocumented 5 years ago, meeting so many young white people across the country, the millennial, tolerant, diverse white millennials across the country. I was struck that many of them didn't know where they came from. I mean, in some ways, immigration, Angela Davis says, is like the link to all of this, because where we come from and how we got here forcibly, right? The African-American slave experience, right? Forced migration, not forced migration, whatever that is, right? And I was struck at how many young white people we interviewed just didn't know where they were from. And then I started thinking, wait a second, so how do you ask me where I'm from and how I got here if you don't know how you got here? Like, white is not a country. right? And we have an organization called defineamerican.com, and the whole job is actually, we were, as everybody's doing, Michaela, like going through like, how do we talk about our work in this new atmosphere? And what we came up with in a crazy 7-hour meeting the other day is this idea that what we're actually trying to do is tell America's whole story. The story that has never really been told. Like here in the Valley, having grown up here and having a lot of friends who, work in the tech industry, we like to say that immigrants built America. The moment we say that, we are leaving off two groups of people, Native Americans and Black people, right? Like that is, how do we tell America's whole story in that way? One last thing about my feeling. My feeling right now is, as you know, undocumented immigrants, people like me have been at the heart of this campaign. I would argue that Donald Trump was very smart in making immigration a central part of his campaign because most people don't know what that is. Right? People here know H-1B visa, DREAM Act maybe, but for the most part, I visited 48 states and done like 850 events like this in the past 5 years. Most Americans don't know what that is, right? And he was able to kind of use that as a central part of the campaign and to blame people. Americans are struggling. Every American is struggling, and they want someone to blame, and they think it's us. And I wonder what happens when he becomes president takes the White House. Right now, there are 700,000 young people who came to this country as children illegally, whose names, addresses, phone numbers have been given to the government that Donald Trump is going to be in charge of. And I'm just finding out that some of those young people are actually Googlers who have that. So what are y'all going to do when he starts rounding them up? What are you going to do? Right? And what does showing up for each other mean? And I love that the panel is as diverse as it is, because I think representation, like what are we all going to do to show up for each other, I think for me is something I'm really grappling with.
I'm Cristela Alonzo. I'm a stand-up comic, and I feel broken. I've been doing stand-up for 13 years. I have traveled the country on the road in a rental car by myself. And I always felt American. I was born in Texas. It wasn't until I started traveling by myself that I realized how different the country was. And I remember the first time I wasn't allowed to check into a hotel room, which was in 2013. And I was shocked. And that's when it kind of realized that life was different outside of my bubble when I went into the real country, and then I started realizing that I was terrified of my life because I was put in situations that were very uncomfortable. And I felt, my God, if I feel like that, how many others don't feel like that? It got to the point where I used to do the Walmart test. And I would go into small towns and I'd go to Walmart. And if I saw that they had Latino products, I felt safe. And if I didn't see the Latino products, I wouldn't stay there because I was scared.
Wait a minute, let that settle in for a second. Now, y'all feel that for a minute. Particularly people that, because, there are a lot of people in here that can, maybe it's not they're looking for Latino products, but they have something similar that they'll do, right? If there's not a Martin Luther King Boulevard, maybe. But settle into this, and this is for the people of whiteness in the room, particularly. Just imagine, like, you're probably doing your own Google search in your mind, and there is nothing like that, right? So just let that settle. There's nothing in your database that goes, let me check to see if I feel safe because of my actual identity in this space, okay? So just, okay.
I think that for me, this election has been life-changing for me because, being completely honest,
That's it. That's all we got.
I realized that I was actually seen as illegal to a lot of people because of my skin color. And that's when I realized that the term illegal meant not white. Because you think about how many immigrants from European countries can come in here and nobody asks them, hey, where are your papers? Because their skin color dictates that they belong here.
The potential first lady. Oh, I'm in denial. The soon-to-be first lady fits that.
Absolutely. So for me, when I feel like that, and I was born here, and I belong here, and I don't feel like I belong here, my God, how does that make everybody else feel? And for me, I think I want to talk about it because I think the most important thing that we have to do is listen. And we need to accept our truths. We can't negate and say, that didn't happen to you. It did happen, that's why I said it. And I think that's how we change things, to actually take everything that we say as truth, process it, and say, you know what, I might be part of the problem. And that's how we learn to accept that maybe we don't have our eyes completely open, and maybe understand that I'm at fault at something. Maybe there's something I don't know. I'm broken. I did a panel last week with Dolores Huerta, who fought for farm workers, Farm Workers Union. I was crying nonstop after the election. And I walked into the room to meet her, and we've known each other for years. She's like, why are you crying? I was like, this election broke me. She said, country felt like that when Nixon got elected. Like, let me tell you about how it felt. And to hear those emotions that you don't read in books, it took its own life. She was standing next to Bobby Kennedy when he was assassinated. And she describes hope dying in front of her face. And when she talked about it, I realized that this is the first setback I've been through personally, and that's why I'm so affected by it. But when you see her, you realize we're gonna get through this.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard, but we're gonna get through this. And sometimes you need to hear the history of somebody else to accept it and process it.
So it's a perfect response to my sister Sybrina, because when you talk about people going through it and what is difficult and what is pain, and who, we often get in a pain Olympics. And no, it's like, but my pain, and I couldn't feed my cat. No, real talk. And also what people can stand through. And, we open this by saying that you inspired this. And Sybrina, I just indulge me for a second, because I love you. I loved you before I met you. I saw you stand.
My Mother's Day.
Yeah. You started a different kind of activism for me, because my entry point to humanity, I'm just gonna be real. My entry point to humanity is through Black women. That is my on-ramp into most things. That's my, how I start. So when Trayvon was murdered, I looked where there was a lone Black woman standing with microphones, and you had buried your boy. The hardest thing that anybody who is, in your personal life, if you are a parent in this room, you know what I just said. You did that, and you still stood, and you still created a movement. The mothers of the movement, be clear, were in this election. Mm-hmm. You all were on the front grounds. You all were in towns, in churches, in beauty shops. You had every reason to be broken and bitter. Talk about broken. You buried your baby. That never goes away. And still you were able to see how you could help move this country forward. Trayvon is our Emmett Till. We know that. We know this. The Black Lives Matter started as a rallying cry for people to try to heal around what happened to Trayvon, because he was our son. He is our son. And if he is our son, then you are our sister forever. So thank you. And why I think it's really, really important for you to be in any room is because we do look at life through our own sets of disappointments. And it's hard to do that with you, sis. Like you, like really, like how, and so how are you feeling? And also I just sometimes get tired, just to be real, of we gonna make this through this. We gonna get up again. Like there are times like, I don't wanna live my life. How much pain can we go through? How much can we take? And often people in the margins, of course that's what we do. We go to church, we go to our spirit, we go to our food, we go to each other. But at some point, when do we stop getting knocked down? That's how I am today. I might change tomorrow. But there are times that we know we have to tell each other we're gonna be all right. But sometimes it's like, damn, stop knocking us down. So, how you doing? And how do you identify? Who are you?
Before this, I was Sybrina Fulton. Now I'm Trayvon Martin's mother. That's my name, Trayvon Martin's mother. And people even call me Miss Martin, which I have not been Miss Martin in many years because I did divorce. I am divorced my husband. And what I can't understand for the life of me is how everybody can go through a divorce and they don't even see their exes, but every time I turn around, my ex is right here, and so I haven't figured all of this out. Let me start off by saying my conversation to you and what I have to say is not polished, is not filtered. I may not say the right things all the time, but it's how I feel. When this happened, I had a normal life. You know, one house, one car, 2 kids, average life. You know, I was a government employee working for the housing agency to try to assist low-income residents. Just normal life. I mean, I had to save money to take my kids on vacations. I would go to work, complain, and keep looking at the watch till it's time to go home. I mean, just the average things, you know, come home from work and ask my kids, why didn't you take out the garbage? Did you do your homework, cut your hair, something, clean your room? Just everyday average things. And I don't know how, for the life of me, my life got interrupted. So I constantly tell people how average I am because this could have happened to anybody. Average, average, average. I want to continue to say that to myself because my family is very tight-knit. I have a very close family. I have really good friends. I have a strong church. I mean, I think I did all the right things. And this happens to my son. So it went from having just an average lifestyle. I'm from Miami, Florida. So this looks like Miami in here. You know, it's a mixture of everything. It's not just African Americans. It's everything. It's Puerto Ricans. It's Cubans. It's Bahamians. It's Haitians. It's Jamaicans. It's Colombians. I mean, everything. We have everybody there. And I just don't understand for the life of me how an average person paid my taxes. I'm a citizen, I pay my taxes. You know, I go to work, I save my money. I did whatever I needed to do to take care of my household and my kids and to get rid of my ex-husband. So on a serious note, I went from a very average life to a broken life. And then it continued to break. So not only did I know or I found out my 17-year-old son had been shot and killed, and not just shot and killed, because I don't believe everything that was told to me by the Sanford Police Department and by the person that killed my son. I just don't, and you wouldn't either. But it was a part of me that said that I was never going to Sanford again. And that I was just going to try to pick up the pieces to my life and move on. But that never happened. Because the mother in me, even though my son was deceased, the mother in me came up and stood up because my son was shot down. So let me just say that again. When my son was shot down, I stood up. You never heard Trayvon Martin's name before February 26, 2012. So it'll bring out some things in you. And it can bring out some negative in you, and it could bring out some positive in you. So don't think for 1 second there was not negative thoughts in my mind. There were. But I chose not to act on those negative things. And I chose to try to do something positive with what had happened to my son. And just to play on terms and just to play on words, Beyonce had a video out. Do you know that? The Lemonade?
Yeah.
Lemonade is when you turn something sour into something sweet. And so that was something that was very important to me because I didn't want to live the rest of my life bitter. Because it would have taken 2 lives instead of 1. Not only would Trayvon be deceased, but I would be here on earth deceased. And I had another son to live for. I had my whole life to live for. And I decided, I made up my own mind with my broken pieces that were on the floor, that I wanted to do something positive to help this country because this country did not see just how broken it was. Mm-hmm. This country is broken. We have to say that. We have to come to terms with it. What is going on now is a reality show. It's a show, and it's happening to us in real life. But we have to say it. A lot of people don't feel like the justice system is broken. Until you have a 17-year-old son that's killed, and you know the exact person that shot and killed him, but because of a technicality, because of the laws and how the laws are applied, the person walked free. And not just walk free, but continue to do things to antagonize the situation. Like sell a gun. Really? Really? You mean to tell me the gun that shot my 17-year-old, you had people bidding on it to buy it? Think about that for a second. I know we're all walking around here with a heart, but some people are heartless. Some people are actually heartless. But what I decided to do is I refused to let somebody else's ideas and suggestions and comment determine who I am. And so a lot of people tell me how strong I am. It's not because I want to be. It's because I have to do this for my son that's in heaven and my son that's here on earth. I don't have a choice. This is my new life. This is who I am. And I will continue to fight for all children until I rest in peace. And so it does not matter when I hear a story on the news and it talks about a 6-year-old that had been drowned in a pool or got in a car accident. I don't care the color of that child's skin. It does not matter. And we have to get to that space where it does not matter if it's your 6-year-old brother or your 6-year-old son. It does not matter the color of his skin. Because I can sit here right now before you, and there are a lot of things I can take off. My jacket, my blouse, my pants, my shoes, but I cannot remove the color of my skin, nor do I want to, because it's who I am. Say that.
Whenever I hear that, when people say that the system is broken, the country is broken, I hear, no, I think the system is working and the country, I I think that there are times that we don't really acknowledge that we are living in a post-genocidal country, and like we started off with stolen land and stolen labor.
Yep.
That's just the history, right? So perhaps, and I'm not even here yet. This is just philosophical, like I'm just working it out with y'all. Perhaps we are not broken. Perhaps we're getting closer to being fixed, because we started off with genocide and slavery. Let's be clear.
Yep.
Right? So how does even a post-genocidal country say that they were ever whole? And how does a justice system that was designed to contain, and most people, so that hopefully I'll get there in my heart, that maybe sometimes healing and being, scars feel the same when they are healing and when they are happening. And so perhaps this pain that we're experiencing isn't the breaking of America. It may be the actual unifying of it, because now some people can actually feel. This is the first time some of my white liberal friends are like fucked up. They're like, oh my God, what you've been saying is real. Oh my God. No, it's not theory. It's real. There's possibility in this moment, y'all. Even though we're broken, we're crying, because this doesn't happen to everybody. Sybrina, I've never heard a white colleague say, oh, I'm afraid my child might not come home from school. And I didn't see the fathers of Sandy Hook get together and march across the country and talk about gun reform. You did not have to do this. There are people whose babies have been killed by gun violence, and they think, oh my God, that was a phenomenon, a horrible phenomenon, that my young white child got shot. For Black families, for Latino families, there are mass graves at the border. We don't even know their names. There are Latino people being lynched. We don't know their names. So this doesn't happen to everybody. Let's just be clear about that. Let's be honest. You are extraordinary. Okay. How are you feeling? And how do you define yourself?
I'm feeling an incredible amount of dissonance. That's going to be the word. I don't have a feeling word right now. Dissonance is where I'm at. And I think to your point of how do we, when we're shifting from something sour to something sweet, moving to lemonade, it makes me think of alchemy. It makes me think of the process. What does it take for a piece of coal to become a diamond? And it's an incredible amount of pressure that's put on it. And you have to face it if you're going to actually evolve to that. I want to borrow from Junot Diaz. I read the New Yorker article of artists, and I think this is such an important time for people who are artists, creatives, writers, to help us make sense of the chaos, make the chaos coherent is sort of where we're at. And I think election night and the next morning, I reached out to one of my dissertation advisors, John Diamond, and was like, I don't understand. I felt like I reverted to like a 5-year-old, and it was like, like someone make sense of this for me. And one thing that I thought was really useful about the way Junot Diaz characterized it is he's saying that we are grappling with a level of rejection that's at a macro level. I think if you're Black, if you're brown, if you're Muslim, if you're LGBTQ, if you're a woman who didn't vote for Trump, you're in a place of feeling a macro level of rejection, an incredible amount of fear, the vulnerability, that I think many people have walked around with, but I feel like it's heightened now. I've been looking at the SPLC's count of incidents of harassment, and I think there are over 400 since election night has been announced. And just literally for me, I have to there's a prayer before I exit my door of Lord, whatever I encounter today, just cover me. On the train, there was a video that was put out, a woman on BART, I think she was from Algeria, and she was recording a woman on BART who's telling her, you're gonna be deported, Trump's gonna send you out of here. I used to be an elementary school teacher, and people who are teaching in classrooms that are in my network, where kids are yelling, build a wall to Latino kids sitting in classrooms. My dad, who's immigrated from Nigeria, sent me a video yesterday morning of Trump actually talking about not allowing West African immigrants to come into the country. So I think there's a level of fear, there's a level of rejection, there's a level of vulnerability, and I feel like we're in mourning in a lot of ways. And I think that we're mourning this experimental idea of democracy, because I think America is unique from other countries in the sense that it's multiracial, multi-ethnic, multiple religions, all in one space. And it does have a history of genocide and a history of involuntary immigration for African peoples. But I would say for the way that America has pursued its foreign interests would suggest that even other people who are immigrating here voluntarily may not necessarily be so voluntary. Right? So I think there's a level of despair. I think what's been challenged is our vision for this country, I think, and the ideals that have been held up. So most of us have been sold a story since birth about what America is, about democracy. And a lot of us who identify, a lot of people who identify as white have been sold a real good story about the history. And a lot of things have been left out. A lot of things have been sugar-coated. And I think that a lot of people who are now just coming into this awakening of like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was real. I think it says a lot about the bubble you've grown up in and what's the implications of segregation, the implications of like the choices I've made. Many people here can wake up and turn on the television and see only people who look like them on the TV. They can go to any magazine rack and the 100 most influential people all look like them. The most beautiful people in the world always look like them. They can go to their church, they can go to the synagogue, they can go to a funeral, and it's everybody who looks like them. The toys that they buy for their kids, the media that they consume in terms of entertainment. Like sometimes I literally have watch television and I'm gonna go through each station to see if I can just find one black person. Like
Without going to BET?
Without going to BET. And if I do find us, like, how are we being characterized? Is there some variation or does it fit the stereotypical narrative? So I think I'm in a place of dissonance and I'm in a place of mourning, like deep mourning internally. And I have to think about my grandfather. He was born in 1911 in Texas. And when I was very young, I would sit at his feet and just stare at his hands. And he had these hands that were full of wrinkles and scars and tears and marks. And he had been working in cotton fields since he was 7 years old. His mother was half Native American, half African American, and was enslaved. And I remember, I don't know why, but his hands just carried the story of his family. And what does it mean to pick cotton? What does it mean to start doing it at 7 years old? What does it mean to have to drop out of school because your older brothers were fighting in a war in a country they weren't citizens of? And what it meant to actually keep going, like despite that. And he adopted my mom at 6 months old. He didn't have any kids of his own. And I sit with that right now of what it meant for him to survive 1911 until he passed in the late 90s. And I think about Dave Chappelle when he talked about what it meant to be alive through that time. Like we just think about the Depression in and of itself, what it meant to survive that. If we think about the 1960s, the number of black people who were killed from like 1960 to 1969 in a very public forum, I can't even imagine the psychic violence that creates. And those were all people who were activists, who were organizers, who were putting themselves on the line. And what does it mean now for us to witness digitized killings of black and brown people, Native American people on the internet, on Facebook, and the psychic violence that creates for us? And then to have the same electorate that supported Obama twice would elect Trump now. Or select. I don't know if it was elect yet. There's a popular vote, didn't really count this time. So I'm in a place of extreme dissonance and an incredible amount of mourning. But I'm also, I'll get to the hopeful place and like let's work and let's fight. But right now, I want to sit in the dissonance and I want to sit with the mourning.
Thank you. That's honest. I'm sorry. This is really how this had to go today. You know, like we had to, right? We couldn't get all academic about, but we do want to be in conversation. So it would be great to shift to you.
Question from Tori.
Oh, great.
India.
Okay. From India.
A lot of votes.
Oh, great.
So I'm going to read a question off of our Dory, where Googlers all over the world are asking questions. Yes, I'm not in the frame. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so we actually have someone from India asking this question. We hear a lot about, so he's asking for a comment. We hear a lot about Black and Hispanic experiences and related interventions, but not much about how other races experience the multicultural workplace. For example, Asians, Indians who are also Asians, etc. So any comments on that?
Jose.
I have a lot to say about this. I'm afraid to say it here, but here it goes. Back to what Michaela is saying, I actually think we are where we are because our conversations are far too comfortable and simplistic. We pat each other in the back, we think we're down, we think we know what's happening, all of that. Before I say what I say, I think I also, I've been just doing a lot of reading, it's grounding me. But I've been thinking that in some ways, 11/9, that is when Donald Trump got elected, is in many ways the culmination of 9/11, right? Like after 9/11, after we were terrorized as a country, we started terrorizing each other, right? We started terrorizing each other, like the other and all of us. I have to say that having traveled the country, like the other now, many people feel are working class white people, right? I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed working class white people who feel that they're not welcome in their own country. And I'm like, yo, you built this, what are you talking about, right? To that conversation. So I'm gonna name one statistic that I think is crucial. In the next 50 years in America, 88% of the total population growth is gonna come from Latinos and Asians. 88%. At a time when the Black Lives Matter movement that you had sparked should forever be central because how we deal with anti-Blackness in the Latino and the Asian community and the Arab community is important. And at a time when white people are an emerging racial minority, which is already the case in high schools all across America, in grade schools and high schools across America. Now, it's fascinating whenever we talk about race and identity that Asian people, who are now the fastest growing racial and immigrant group, 72% of all Asian adults in America are immigrants. We are more immigrants than Latinos are immigrants. And yet, we are just kind of invisible in our, rice noodles. And I hate to say that, I don't want to stereotype this, but if you think about it, the Asian community, as it is a huge community with different languages, different cultures. We don't all speak Spanish. You know, the only thing that has really organized Asian people in the past 2 years was a letter that was edited on Google Docs. I don't know if you remember this. When Asian people on Twitter started getting together after Philando Castile and wrote an open letter to their families about why they stand up for Black lives. And I remember going into the letter, I'm like, I'm a journalist, I can copy edit. So I'm copy editing the letter, and at one point on Google Doc, this amazing Google Doc thing, there was like 200 of us.
Do you think, Jose, because just in the world of engineering or safety standards, often things are built because of some kind of horror or tragedy, or, you know what I mean? And so because we don't have a Trayvon Martin or build a wall, kill them all kind of thing to attach to the Latino community, or we seeing Muslims being, terrorized, so people emotionally get involved. Do you think that has something to do with it?
That, and I think because in this country, to be American has always been to be white. Whiteness was constructed to say you're not Black. And now that most of the country's Latino and Asian, how we pass as white? Like sometimes I wonder within my own Asian friends and colleagues, like how many of us actually think we're white or better than white? Right? Like we're not even a part of that conversation. And now that Asian people, and I'm saying this as someone who's undocumented and who's been doing this work, it's been really lonely. How even in the Asian community, this has been for the most part, silent issue. The fastest growing undocumented population are Asian immigrants. 1 out of 7 Koreans in this country is undocumented. 1 out of 7, right? And so the fact that we have allowed it to be racialized as a Latino-Mexican issue, right? We've allowed it, right? And what I struggle with is this idea now, what do we do, right? Like there was a report that said that apparently Asian people are now the most affluent and educated group of people in America. Yet civic involvement, like what does citizenship, I gave this really uncomfortable speech in Chicago, the home of like a lot of Filipinos.
So let's make us a little one.
Yeah, so it was like 300 Filipinos, and I can't vote. I've been here for 23 years since I grew up in Mountain View, but I'm here illegally, so I don't have any voting power, right? So I asked the audience, hey, how many people here are American citizens? Like 90%. How many people here are registered to vote? Out of 300 people, maybe 10. And I'm like, put the lumpia down. You know what lumpia is? It's amazing. It's an amazing Filipino food, right? I'm like, put the egg roll down. Are you freaking kidding me with this? There is more to America than buying a nice house and driving a Lexus and earning the money so you can send it home to the Philippines in boxes. Like, how are we gonna involve ourselves? This is our home. And the intersection of race and immigration, right? The first group of people that racially got excluded were Chinese. The Chinese Exclusion Act. In this country, we didn't give Native American citizenship rights until 1924. I would argue that the Black Lives Matter movement is all about citizenship. That is way beyond papers and laws, but it's about dignity. So to me, I actually think the question of citizenship, of how we earn that. How many people here are American citizens? Can you raise your hands? Congratulations. I'm so happy you are. Now the question though is, what are you doing to risk it? And what have you done to earn it? And not to the people who have always been marginalized, right? I would argue that a definition of America for me are the people who have always been excluded from it and have to fight for it. All of us have done that in our capacity. And I'm sorry, because we're gonna get uncomfortable about this. The conversation is really about whiteness and how that is always central, how it's always as if we always have to explain who we are and how we got to where we got. I actually think we should start a movement trying to explain white people. How did you get to where you got? Why do you think you're the center of the world? Why is it that when white people move, it's manifest destiny, it's the next frontier, it's white man's burden? When we move, it's a question of legality and criminality. How can my iPhone have more migrant rights than I do? I think that's an essential question. And all of us who are privileged, you know, we are in San Francisco, we are here. Like, again, the question is, what are you doing to risk your privilege? How are you gonna get uncomfortable? How are you gonna get out of your comfort zone? How are you gonna learn the fullness of American history, right? And how are you gonna advocate for us? So I think that is kind of where I'm at. And I feel like sometimes we, you know, to your point, Michaela, about shape-shifting, you know, like I always, when I'm in front of conservative Tea Party Republicans, like I was just at like last week, I have to go, okay, don't offend them, don't be the angry illegal person, smile, you know, pronounce your words like Charlie Rose. And you know, I feel as if my life and maybe Asian people, because of our identity, we're always so excluded, that maybe because of that, we've internalized that exclusion. But now we have to insist on being included, and we have to insist on being uncomfortable too.
We're gonna get a question, and I know you want to say it. I know you can hold it. Is there a question from the floor?
I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, even though the discussion was about race, you asked everyone what their identity was. And that is really important to me because what I consider myself, my identity is not really race, because I feel other people don't look at me and see an Indian. What I've always grown up is people look at me and see religion. So I identify myself as a Sikh who's mistaken for the first 15 years of my life. People would call me a Buddhist, and then the last 15 years since 9/11, a Muslim. And that's fine. I don't mind being mistaken for someone else. I would like it to be. It makes me happy when people recognize me, but it's fine because I think it's important to accept everyone who they are. For me personally, I don't mind if people mistake me for someone else or something else. What I do want is people to accept others for who they are, just who they are, however they label themselves. My question is, how do we promote just acceptance? Right now, that's the biggest thing, which I think is dividing us. Even if you feel some way or feel someone else is wrong, as in there's a lot of people who are angry at like the people you were saying who are, you know, the poor white middle class who felt marginalized. Yep. And there's a lot of people who just didn't accept them. How do we just promote acceptance in general, and what's the best way to go about doing that?
One of the things that I would say is, as a human race, we really have to get back to the basics. Yep. We really have to start respecting one another, regardless of your education level. You can't possibly look at someone and tell if they're educated or not. It's just so not important. What's important is that they are a human being. And you should care about them merely because they are. regardless, nobody asked to be here. You didn't ask your parents to be born. You didn't. And so we have to make the best of who's here. I just have so much to say. It's just hard for me to put it into words, but we have to get back to the basics, and that's respect. It doesn't matter if I have long hair, if I have short hair, if I have dreadlocks, if my hair is nappy, if my hair is blonde, brunette, brown hair. It doesn't matter if I wear glasses or don't wear glasses, or I'm short, I'm tall, whatever religion I am, it does not matter. Can you just for a second look to the person to your right and just say hello? You just said, hello, how are you? We have to get back to the basics. I'm a firm believer in that. It does not matter all the things that are put into our heads, and I shouldn't say it by social media and by the media.
Yep.
It's just so not important. Those things are not important. What's important is who's here, what we're doing, and how we're going to move forward. It does not matter your nationality. It does not matter your race. It does not matter your religion. Everybody is a human being, and we should treat them as such. Let's get back to the basics.
We're winding down. I want to get another question. I know that we're going to, if both of you can have prepared like 30 seconds, how you want to respond. But this is helping. We have to tell each other stories. Okay.
How all of you can help us think about how to move forward. Like what frightens me is the level of hatred that we have. So many hate crimes acting. So instead of Hillary Clinton being sad that she didn't win, how can we activate those people, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, to say, how can we make a stand that those acts are not going to be tolerated and prosecuted to the highest level of the existing law that we have now? How can we stem the tide and everyone who felt differently, what can we do actively to make that stop?
Do you mind if I throw that to Michael? But just some very, no, not to shock you, but just some very, no, because there's some places to go. Yep. So if you can just kind of give a couple of, websites or places to go to be very pragmatic about that.
I'm going to be very pragmatic, but I'm also going to segue to Myosha. I think Southern Poverty Law Center, right? ACLU, are two organizations that need help and can use support. So go to the Southern Poverty Law Center website and ACLU on that specific question on hate crimes. We've seen 400 plus hate crimes since the election of Donald Trump reported in this country. And that is what the Southern Poverty Law Center has seen in 6 months prior to that. So 400 in 1 week, 6 months prior, and reported hate crimes. So certainly those two organizations, you can go, if you can give resources, your time, your energy, they can use help.
Can I just say that I think that we're talking about race, and we also have to talk about why Trump won. Yeah. And I think this is the theory, is that for 8 years, there were white people that felt like they weren't listened to, they weren't paid attention to, they felt disenfranchised, disillusioned, and they decided to do something about it. And it's cute for me to think that it's 8 years, because people of color, that's what we live our entire lives based out of. Our entire existence is based out of being uncomfortable, feeling left out. And it's weird to think that so many of them under the Obama administration felt like that.
Yeah.
But that shows that there's a problem, because they didn't feel like they were being listened to. We feel like we haven't been listened to, and I know I haven't been listened to. I know my people haven't been listened to. I mean, look, the guy won on the premise of building a wall. And I have people calling me illegal and saying awful things to me every day of my life now. It's weird to think that the Midwest felt like a person of color did for 8 years. And they did something about it. I think it's interesting that we're in this room talking about hundreds of years. And we're still trying to catch up. In 8 years, they got to have their voice spoken, and here we are saying, it's been hundreds of years, what do we do? And it's weird to think that in order to make any kind of advancement, we really do, we have to pay attention to what we're saying, because that's the only way that we can move forward to make each other feel like we matter. We have to matter. That's, I think, one of the most important steps. What do we do? How do we fight? How do we let our voice heard? Accept everybody for what they're saying, even though you may not agree. I think that in order to make any progress, we have to make the country very uncomfortable for a long time now until they listen.
All right, y'all, get in your comfy clothes. But I want to thank Google, because we all know everybody's tradition. They tell stories, and that's, once you hear someone's story, you can't unhear it. And so I want to thank you for giving us a space to share, because now everyone knows a little bit more about somebody. And there's power in it. And even though we're all tripping and broken and feeling crazy, I do feel there's a lot of smart people in this room, and there is opportunity in tragedy always. Sybrina is testimony to that, right? So take care. I think we need to take care of ourselves, and everybody get their 10 sessions. But feel like, be available to the opportunity. There are hundreds of thousands of young people in the street that are letting us know something, that the future is not comfortable, right? So I feel very encouraged by that. If we're seeing like all these, the youth uprisings, and they're very mixed, they look like this room. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.